Portland, Oregon. It's time for A Different View, with women's perspectives on the fight to end prohibition again. With Portland Dispensaries Examiner and mother of four, Jennifer Alexander, and professional healthcare provider Iva Cunningham from Alternative Medical Choices, Inc. Now, here's A Different View.
Welcome to A Different View. I'm Jennifer, here with Iva.
Hello, everybody.
We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, as always, this week.
Some exciting stuff happening right now.
Yes, lots of stuff. And we're looking at a federal bill to legalize marijuana. It's not the first time, but it's interesting, the changes in the dialogue.
Well, it seems like the baton has been passed to someone else, Earl Blumenauer. And
Blumenauer and Polis instead of Paul and
yeah, and there's some other exciting things going
Barney
on. We'll
Frank.
Talk about that too. We have in studio guest, just an update on a guest that we've had previously. We'll refer to you as Jane Doe if that's okay. But a recap on that story and what's happening there. Gosh, there's much.
There's a bunch of stuff that we're going to talk about, just sort of the consequences of the drug war in general. Some news stories that have come out recently. We've got a couple of those to talk about tonight. Specifically, one of the more interesting stories I've read this week was a narcotics officer in Oakland County was fired and had apparently been lying under oath and various drug cases. And he was found guilty of all of this, and it's affecting multiple other cases that he's been on over the years. Well, but it highlights the incentive in our current structure of the laws for even police to be on the wrong side of the law here.
Right.
It's not.
There's lots of consequences with that. Even though there are a lot of people that got convicted because of drugs, but this has wide-reaching consequences way beyond just the marijuana cases or drug cases.
And we've got Chris Williams up in Montana sentenced, so we'll talk a little bit about that too. So
all big news. You're listening to A Different View. We'll be right back.
A blind man staring at something only he can see. I spotted him like night sky plotted him. Starstruck sits alone. He's at home, rafted in a sea of blackness. 3 fingers on his swollen hand beside a dented garbage can. A blind man staring at something only he can see. I spotted him like night sky plotted him. Starstruck sits alone. He's at home, rafted in a sea of blackness.
California is the center of marijuana consciousness. That's why High Times Magazine is returning to the Golden State for our second High Times Medical Cannabis Cup in Los Angeles. That's right. Come to LA Center Studios on February 16th and 17th for this high-flying event. Meet the medical cannabis industry, visit our extra special medicating area, and sample the best cannabis products of Southern California. There'll be cultivation seminars and presentations about getting pot legalized, not just in California, but everywhere. Be there on Saturday evening when we host a Rock'em Sock'em concert with surprise musical guests. And don't forget Sunday night and the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup Awards when we honor the best sativa, best indica, best hybrid, best concentrate, and best edibles of the LA medical cannabis scene. Plus, we present the High Times Lifetime Achievement Award to marijuana superstar Tommy Chong. Come to the City of the Angels on February 16th and 17th for a High Times cannabis celebration. Go to medcancup.com for details. Live the high life. Be proud of who you are. Be part of the growing cannabis community.
Welcome back. I'm Jennifer here with Iva. So first I wanted to kind of kick off our show to talk a little bit about this new bill. It's Earl Blumenauer, which is our Oregon legislator here, and Jared Polis, who's from Colorado. And they both took an earlier bill that was proposed by Barney Frank and Ron Paul and sort of tweaked it a little bit to the times, I guess you'd say, with Washington and Colorado legalizing marijuana. They're trying to put this before the Congress again. And you've got my little cheat sheet over there. But there's a summary that we'll post up on our Facebook and website here in a minute that talks about what the goals of this act are. It's the Ending Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act of 2013.
Right.
And the three major things that it'll do is decriminalize marijuana, regulate it like alcohol, and transfer federal marijuana jurisdiction from the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, where it currently is, to the firearm, tobacco, and alcohol alcohol.
I'm not sure I like that
Or
name.
I said that backward. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Bureau of Alcohol,
Explosive.
Tobacco, Marijuana, Firearms, and Explosives, or, as Hunter S. Thompson called it, a start to the weekend.
Yeah, well, and I'm not a big fan of the ATF myself, but I think that it shows the changing thought process to marijuana. And I was mentioning before we started the show this most recent poll, which it looks like you were going to say something, so we'll get to this in a second.
Okay.
But that sort of identifies exactly how that's all leaning, what people are seeing nationwide with the topic
to me,
of marijuana.
my issue with it is, again, it's kind of like being on a schedule. It doesn't belong there. To me, marijuana should be regulated under agriculture, not under, the ATF. It just seems like the wrong place to place it.
And I think that there's different perspectives in our society on how we regulate substances, food, medicines, even, medical care. All of these things, we have different regulatory bodies, and people vary on how they feel.
Right, but cannabis has so many overlapping areas. I mean, we are talking about agriculture. We are talking about food. We are talking about, our environment. We are talking about a fuel. And I just see a lot of different lobbying groups invested in it, and I don't know. I want to know what the repercussions of putting it there are. I know that's not the big point,
No,
but
I think
just
that's valid. That's what I'm saying. Is I think that part of the conversation is the part we've never really had before. Because when marijuana was legal previously, 30s and before, it wasn't regulated in any way like that. Neither was drugs in general. Neither was alcohol.
Right.
None of these things were regulated in those ways. That all came after we outlawed marijuana. So it's not a way that we've ever viewed marijuana, a regulatory way. Now, I'm happy to see that we're changing from an enforcement ban prohibition perspective to a how are we going to regulate it and who's going to regulate it discussion. That to me is progress. That now that we're having this discussion, I don't know how long it'll take us to come to a conclusion on it. I have a feeling that most Americans aren't prepared to have the Department of Agriculture, overseeing marijuana, even though that is the most rational choice.
Right.
But I think that
Excuse me.
that we're moving that way for sure.
Well, the idea that there's new blood taking up the bill, and also at a time when there is legalization, we are talking about legalization. Also, when we're also talking about Kentucky and growing hemp and those sort of things, I think that maybe this time it has a little bit more legs.
And I think it answers the glaring question that needs answered, which is how does the federal government deal with these states having legalized marijuana without, violating the will of the people? The people have voted; they want this. Exactly,
and I think it's taking a closer look at allowing, a way to allow those states to do it without federal interference. Because there
let's
really
be clear,
isn't.
there's a little bit of federal interference in this bill because it does require that marijuana growers get a federal permit, which, as we know from hemp bills, they don't issue currently. But again, it's still a step in the right direction, and then it's a matter of requiring the government to do what they're supposed to do, the permitting process, as opposed to getting them to lift prohibition. If we can get them to lift prohibition, I expect that we're still going to have a lot of work to do.
Oh, of course. There's the regulation part of lifting,
Right. So really quick, I do want to summarize this poll because this, to me, is fascinating. It's the first time I've seen a poll ask these sorts of questions side by side. In 2002, there was a Times poll that basically asked, should people be arrested for using marijuana? And it was something like 72% said no, but we didn't legalize. That was 2002. If you ask them, are we going to legalize marijuana, the number was significantly lower. In 2002, I want to say it was in the mid 30% range, somewhere in there. It's been increasingly or going up regularly since then. But this particular poll asks, do you favor or oppose legalizing marijuana for recreational use, which is that broad question that we're always looking at. Should we legalize marijuana? And we always see those lower results.
Right.
Until this last year, we started seeing 51% as a high. This one gets 47% and 49% oppose it. But immediately after that question, they say, some people argue the government should treat marijuana the same as alcohol. Do you agree or disagree? And at that question, 53% agree. So you gain 6% by simply, instead of saying legalizing, say regulate like alcohol.
Right, and that's been, well, I've mentioned that several times. It's like we need to stop saying, we need to define what legalization means to us, and it means regulate.
And that's because some people, when they hear, should we legalize marijuana, they picture it sold in the spontaneous buy sections of the grocery store so that anybody can just pocket it on their way out.
They envision the country fair people running around, naked and getting high and doing all kinds of drugs. Those who don't understand their culture, they see that.
And any example that we come up with, or worse.
Yeah. Because it is a culture war. It is a culture war.
There's fear. It's fear of the unknown. When we say regulate it like alcohol, we are defining what we mean and putting it in something that they're familiar with.
Right, exactly. Right. They already know what regulating alcohol is. They already understand that. This just puts it into language that they understand.
And let's be clear, there is an argument against regulating it like alcohol in that kids can still access alcohol, blah, 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 all of these things. But we see that reflected in the percentage that oppose it, which in that case was... Hold on one second. I just stuck the page together. The people that opposed treating it like alcohol was only 45% as opposed to the 49% to legalizing it. They're seeing the same paradigm that we have with alcohol, where it is still a cultural and societal problem.
Right.
But it's not prohibited like marijuana is, So changing the dialogue, like we were talking about over the last few weeks, actually, really matters. And so then they went on further, which this I really like, because this addresses the Colorado-Washington paradigm that's just been created. And more states are soon to follow, guaranteed.
Right.
They say, should the federal government arrest people who use marijuana in states that have legalized marijuana? So if the state says yes, should the federal government intervene? 72% said no. And when they asked, what about, people who grow marijuana? 68% said no. 68% of people believe that if your state says it's okay to grow marijuana for recreational purposes, that the federal government has nothing to do with it. And then they asked the final question, which this is most revealing to me. Should the federal government arrest people who sell marijuana in states that have legalized marijuana? And still 64% of people said no. So when we're talking about a commercial market, 64% of people believe that the federal government has nothing to do with this conversation. They don't necessarily support the state legalizing it, but if the state votes to do it, they don't believe the federal government should intervene. And that's, again, crucial, that sort of... Our conversation is evolving.
Right.
We're seeing what people support, what they don't support, and that's going to help us develop a comprehensive plan nationwide.
Well, I think when we have stats like that, it just proves that the will of the people is leaning in our direction, and that they can't just ignore it anymore. It is becoming a divisive issue.
I was going to say, when 72% of people think that the federal government should not bother people who use marijuana in states that have legalized it,
it's a statement.
That's not leaning.
Yeah, no, that's
overwhelming. Presidents don't win at that level. I mean, come on. The marijuana legalization bills were only 55%. We're looking at 72%.
And I think that those statistics are scaring opponents, and you see that with Russ's website, or your pal,
your satirical Samuel,
site.
Project Samuel.
I
love it. Smartapproaches.org, right, for people. Smartapproaches.com for those that haven't checked it out. It's worth checking out.
But understand, it's satire.
So we do need to cut to a break here shortly, but I do want to I guess I'm doing this a little early. Maybe we don't have to do a break yet. We've got a couple more minutes. I wanted to talk about the county narcotics officer.
Oh, I'm not familiar with this.
Well, this one, and I'll put this up in our Facebook page in a minute.
Okay, I do.
Oakland County officer that was involved in multiple narcotics warrants was found to be lying about the search warrants, the evidence, all of this. So this is multiple people who have been sentenced, who are facing current charges. All of these cases have come under question.
The thing is, it isn't just drug cases. It's all those other cases where we've got hardened criminals. Every case that he's touched is going to be questioned. Every single one. So now we're going to waste time. We wasted a lot of time locking people up for drug offenses based on his lies. Now we're going to waste even more time going through all that stuff and then probably releasing some people that really should be in jail.
Right, but it also will highlight all those people that shouldn't have been in jail.
Well, absolutely.
And the article that I got all this information
I just
about
think it
kind
was
of
senseless
focuses
and a waste
on
of time.
the incentive for police to lie under oath. It really, there is an incentive. They need their arrests, they get money for that. There's a lot of incentives. The one quote that I grabbed from this article is that thousands of people plead guilty to crimes every year in the United States because they know that the odds of a jury's believing their word over a police officer's are slim to none. As a juror, whom are you likely to believe? The alleged criminal in an orange jumpsuit and two well-groomed police officers in uniforms who just swore to God they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but. As one of my colleagues recently put it, everyone knows you have to be crazy to accuse the police of lying. And I can say for confirmation that I got a retarded ticket for turning left when I shouldn't have between 3 to 7 p.m. It was 2:53. The officer jumped the gun, but I got in trouble with the judge for saying, no, it was not 3 o'clock yet. The lights were not flashing. I mean, you cannot challenge these people in court. And it's a problem of our system. And this story reflects why it's such a problem. Police aren't always telling the truth.
Well, no.
So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. There's a lot of interesting things to consider in that. You're listening to A Different View. We'll be right back.
This thing go away. Baseline on my face like Novocaine. Snort the line of the coke flow. Get them high off the rhyme 45 by dope show. Let my mind and my soul flow.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
I'm Sub Cool from Team Green Avenger. At TGAgenetics.com, we are working on the leading edge of medical strains. Our strains are rigorously tested for THC, CBD, THCV, and other critical cannabinoids. Know your grow. Check out our genetic diversity at TGAgenetics.com, the home of Jelly Bean, Jack the Ripper, Vortex, and other award-winning cannabis strains.
Back with A Different View.
Welcome back. I'm Jennifer here with Iva. So right before we went to break, we were talking about the police lying under oath and how it affects
Not
the
just drug
system in
cases.
general,
Right.
and not just drug cases. Yeah, there's a lot of different incentives to lie. I'm posting the link to this story on our Facebook page right now. This stood out to me the most. This is the first part that I want to really concentrate on with this narcotics officer that was arrested, he was arrested and fired for his lies under oath. It said that he falsified the search warrant, lies under oath, and then he finally got fired. And the quote is, Ferguson has not been criminally charged. Oakland County Under Sheriff Michael McCabe said the department didn't seek criminal charges for fear that a possible acquittal would allow Ferguson to get his job back through arbitration.
Jesus.
And then it continues, juries have a difficult time convicting police officers, McCabe said, noting that there have been numerous cases in which officers who beat criminal charges were reinstated. And then we would be stuck with him. We can't take the chance that the jury will acquit. So what they're virtually saying is that this police officer, again, this incentive to lie, cannot be charged because should he be acquitted, he can be forced back onto the public roles as an officer enforcing the law with basic liberty to continue to lie under, you know what I mean? Like if they're not able to firmly and 100% prove the case,
So basically,
they're afraid to even charge
he's ruined
them.
all these people's lives, numerous lives, and he basically is too much of a threat to God.
It's disturbing, but it's true. And on the other hand, the average Joe, you, me, anybody that we know, that this officer may have lied under oath to falsify these warrants, would then not have that same. I mean, his testimony is biased against us.
Right.
Even though he's basically immune from it, And in this particular case, the thing that finally got him busted was there was a shipping crate that had been sent in, and him and other officers went there, and I don't remember how they ended up there, but he busted open the crate, verified that there was marijuana inside, resealed the crate, and then went and got a search warrant. Because, see, the initial search would have been unlawful and would have prevented them from proceeding with the case.
Right.
He unlawfully entered the crate.
Verified.
Had he done it properly the first time and gotten the search warrant, then it would have been all proper. So when he found it, he tried to cover up that he had found it by then creating the search warrant, swore under oath that he did not open it.
So he's not really upholding the law that he was sworn to protect. He's just meeting a quota.
Well, it's got to. I mean, if you're willing to lie, that's not the purpose of the law. It's there's a problem there. This other article that I'm posting on our Facebook page is like kind of a full analysis of why police lie, and this is what we were kind of just talking about a minute ago about the incentives to lie.
Right.
One of the people analyzing why the police lie basically said that there was two reasons. His name's Mr. Keene, and he wrote an article that this is commenting on, basically. He said that officers first lie because they can.
Right.
They know that in a swearing match between a drug defendant and a police officer, the judge always rules in favor of the officer.
Right.
Fact.
And it's perfectly legal for them to lie
At
to you.
worst, the case will be dismissed, but the officer is free to continue business as usual. Second, criminal defendants are typically poor and uneducated, often belonging to a racial minority and often have a criminal record. Police know, this is his quote now, police know that no one cares about these people. And that's virtually what it is. It's the same thing with the marijuana laws. These certain perspectives that we put out there. I mean, if you hear this guy's a cop, he's been a cop for X number of years, he's arrested this many bad guys. He looks like a person of authority, somebody to be trusted, respected, and
so the
his
more
word
cases
is
he
gold.
has closed, the more
This other person is a criminal,
right?
who's got incentive to lie because he's being charged.
Right.
You're inclined to not believe them.
So the court does make the jury, or it seems like they're
biased.
oblivious to the bias. Yeah.
And then it goes on to say that police departments have been rewarded in recent years for the sheer number of stops, searches, and arrests. Going back to the quota, as you were saying, that these numbers matter.
Right.
In the war on drugs, federal grant programs like the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program have encouraged state and local law enforcement agencies to boost drug arrests in order to compete for millions of dollars in funding. And they receive these high cash awards for arresting high numbers of people for drug offenses, no matter how minor the offenses. And we all know this. We know this. We look at these things every day. I mean, Russ analyzes this stuff all the time. They're being paid with our federal dollars as an incentive to continue the drug war. So it's a perpetuating cycle,
right.
you know. But
that's
it's also
why they fight so hard
for
to keep
it to be
illegal.
that corrupt. And
well, that's what I always say. Is the take is on all sides.
It is.
The take is on all sides. And it's no different than the prohibition of alcohol. Everybody was using it. Everybody was in on the take. Everybody wanted a piece of it. And, everybody by different means, but everybody was in on the take. The DEA doesn't want marijuana to be legal. I mean, it's the easiest drug it's the most popular drugs, and it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Why would you want to get rid of the easy job?
Right.
I mean, and look at the other side of that is going in and confiscating and destroying people's lives, destroying asset forfeiture and all. Why would you? I mean, this is a huge money maker for them.
It is.
So but nobody wants to talk about the bias that's built in. Nobody wants to really address that. And it's up to us to prove that we're worthy of being responsible adults to use cannabis. When the truth of the matter is that this is a much bigger problem than the right to consume cannabis.
It's not even just about it's about the way our criminal system works. And marijuana just illustrates how failed that system is. It really isn't
To me,
about
it's the black
marijuana.
line. When you were a kid, you used to color and a black line around the picture. That's what it reminds me of.
Right.
It is that. It's like it's intertwined in everything, and it highlights the biggest issues that we have in our society that we need to address: the crime, our penal system, our judicial system, our laws, and our federal state rights and responsibilities. All that stuff is going on, food and everything else. But if everyone's in on the take and we don't want to talk about the bias on both sides, I don't see, this bill that Blumenauer or anybody else wants to pass.
Well, and that's a good transition to this other article that I wanted to mention, and I've posted it on our Facebook page as well. It's called True or False, U.S. Prisons Are Overflowing with People Who Don't Belong There. And it opens up introducing the story of somebody who had gone to prison for possession of meth with intent to distribute and some other stuff like that. And what had basically happened is that they had arrested her dealer, I believe it was, and she had gotten some from her dealer. I think that she might have had the intent to sell some of it like small portions, more the personal size. But her dealer basically accused her of being the dealer for the dealer.
Right.
And so that got the person, her dealer, an immunity, no jail, and got her sent away for 10 years. So there's also this incentive for co-defendants to lie and for people to pass it off on one. And our system encourages that. If you'll testify against this person.
Right.
We talked a little bit about that with the Montana cannabis case, which we'll get back to in a minute in the next segment. But with how the various co-defendants testified against each other and got lesser sentences for doing so. It doesn't matter if what they're saying is true or false if they're clearly gaining by saying what's wanted to be heard.
Right.
Nobody cares if that's the truth or not, except for the people going to jail for it, of course. But it speeds up their process. Now they've got fewer people to try.
Right.
They've got proof against this other person, making it a more firm trial. There's an incentive all the way around to manipulate that, and that's people not going to jail.
Well, and it's exploited.
Right. So this is to say that the people that are sitting in our prisons aren't necessarily the people that should be there, even if we were enforcing these laws as they appear.
But we're not. I just want to be clear. According to Russ's good buddy, Kevin Sabat, we're not enforcing these laws, but we need to maintain them.
Well, and that's just it, though. It's a whole big joke. I mean, it's not a funny one, but it is a joke.
Right.
The way that we enforce these laws, it's applied economically, it's applied racially, it's applied disproportionately to have effects other than reducing drug use. We are not using it for its stated purpose, and we're not succeeding at its stated purpose.
No.
So,
and the
I mean,
intent of the law
if
is
there's
lost.
another war that they want to put on, like on poor people or minorities, just be blunt about it. Do it for real. Quit playing these games with people's lives.
Right.
Let's have serious debates about real issues instead of manipulating the system to suit you. And this is these officers, these defendants. It's everybody all the way up the chain, and it's not just.
Oh my! Well, doesn't it aggravate you? Because it's you and I. You're familiar with the penal system much more than I am. But how we talk about how difficult it is once you're in it to get out, to get because you're always mired in it in some way. Once you're in the system, it seems like you're always in the system in some way.
Right.
Even if you've served your time, paid your restitution, it doesn't matter. Somehow you're still in the system.
Well, and I was going to say I didn't have a chance to fact check it, but that article that we were just talking about, they cite that the penal system is 140% over capacity, and that is believable to me. The people
I believe
that
it is
I
too.
know
Look at
that have gone-
Arizona.
Yeah, they're crowded. They don't have the resources that they need. We're
they
locking
don't care,
people up like
as long
sardines.
Well, prisons are privatized. If you've ever watched any of the documentaries where they show the inside the prisons, and people always go, you get 3 squares and a roof over your head. Yeah, it's not all that glamorous. People are living on top of each other. Sometimes a bed is a cement floor and a blanket. And you might be lucky to get that. Some of these cells have, beds for 2 or 3 people, but 5 or 6 people are living in them.
Yeah.
They're overcrowded, and no one seems to care. I mean, this is, and then we use those prison populations for to benefit some corporations.
The private prison industry complex.
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's.
It's all, like I said,
So it makes
it's
sense.
a
Keep
joke
those
that's
locked
not
up.
funny.
No, I mean, keep those people locked up because, no, I'm just kidding. I'm like kidding. We got to have somebody who's willing to do all that labor.
Well, and going back to
all
that
those
Oakland,
unemployed people.
officer lying, he ain't locked up. How many lives did he destroy? He ain't locked up.
No, and he never will.
And he never will be because they're afraid to charge him.
I wonder if he could be sued by anybody that was released. I wonder
You
if
can
he
always
could do a
sue
civil suit.
anybody, but will they be successful is the question, and who knows? Again, when you've got an officer sitting on one side, even a discredited
But then again, if you're
officer.
suing him, what would you get out of it? Would you sue the city? Would you sue what would you do?
And those kind of those kind of lawsuits are worthwhile to pursue. There was a lady here in Portland that won a couple of million or something like that for a situation similar. When you sue the police, but you usually don't win.
Right.
Let's be real.
Because nobody wants to convict an officer.
Anyway, you're listening to A Different View. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
What we are hoping for. What are we hoping for? Since Amelia.
I'm John Bon Jovi, and I've been given a script to talk to you about drugs, rock and roll, having fun, a good time, and all that good stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, drugs is not a part of my everyday routine. It's not everyday fun. It's not good for you. All right, so listen, think twice before you do drugs, because there ain't no winners out there doing it.
Fun. Big Daddy thinks. Ooh, yeah.
This is a Shy Bros production.
Call me posted on the corner, posted on the corner, call me posted on the corner, keep it in the hood, call me posted on the corner, twisting that good, I got that old black dicky on, keep it in the hood, call me posted on the corner, posted on the corner, call me posted on the corner, keep it in the hood, call me posted on the corner, twisting that good, I got that old black dicky on, keep it in the hood.
Posted on the corner, return of the stoner. Wanna hear you a color, real life persona. Loves from Soma, we stay cold. These sometimes know my toe go over and over. Damn, I love that odor. Copped another coda. See that time soda, pass it through the border. Living never sober, Swiss bliss roller. Cannabis holder, plug in the grower. Bacon motor, liggins and
Now we're back with A Different View.
Welcome back. I'm Jennifer here with
I can't get my
Iva.
mouth to work for some reason. Just
Mouth's broke. So, I wanted to divert back to Montana. We've talked a little bit about this ongoing
Montana.
case. There's been, 4 different people prosecuted in the Montana Cannabis Collective DEA case. And the last one to be sentenced was Chris Williams, who was facing over 90 years in prison as a result of mandatory minimum prison sentencing. Primarily on gun charges. It was like 5 years on the marijuana charge and then 87 years on gun charges for guns that weren't even his, weren't near him, weren't in his possession because of conspiracy. Conspiracy laws make you responsible for the actions of your co-defendants, even those co-defendants that should plead out.
Conspiracy doesn't have to be proven.
It's fascinating how that law works. It really is. I mean, you can become responsible for a lot of things that you had no control over, no idea what was going on, simply by proximity and by being willing to engage in any other illegal act with this person. It's going back again to the justice. Like, is this justice? We really have to ask ourselves. But he was sentenced to 5 years ultimately after they dropped certain charges down. They reduced it in a plea deal. And they call this a rare
post-trial plea deal.
Post-trial or post-conviction plea deal. Because he was already convicted. He was found guilty on all those counts. So basically,
he had nothing to lose by appealing it.
Well, by pleading, you mean?
I thought he appealed it. I thought he was convicted.
He cannot appeal it as a part of this plea
deal.
deal.
Okay, sorry.
And that's the frustrating thing about the plea deal. I think everybody would have been more comfortable with the plea deal if it didn't include him having to sign away his right to appeal. And I hope he fights that. I hope he gets the short sentence, gets out and fights to appeal it, because I don't feel like they should have the right to tell you that you can't use the justice system. That's why it's there.
Yeah.
But I know this is not an uncommon thing to have happen,
Well, but by the end of 5 years, and after he's gone through all of this, and his entire life has been turned upside down, and the effect on his family, not to mention his personal finances. At the end of 5 years, how much fight do you have in you?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope that somehow this works out to be less, because 5 years is too long for growing cannabis under the state law. I mean, again, going back to that poll that we were just talking about earlier, it was 64% of people feel that the federal government has nothing to do with you growing and selling marijuana.
Right.
That being the case, there's overwhelming support for what he was doing. It was legal in his state to do it. And it was the DEA who raided and arrested and charged.
Right. So it was federal, yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about overwhelming support to not prosecute him in this way, and yet we're still prosecuting him in this way. I will say, the 5-year plea deal for him, and this kind of leads into where we're going to go with our guest at the end of the show here, but he had a child that he wanted to see again.
Right.
This weighs into his decision. Again, not about justice. It's about other things.
Other things that are more
90-some years in prison, he wouldn't see his grandchildren.
Right.
He wouldn't see the outside world again, So
Yeah.
it was like, give up my life or accept 5 years in prison. That's really not a hard decision to make when it's put in that perspective.
But even at that, 5 years is ridiculous.
5 years is still
for a state law, following a state law.
Right. But it just goes to show, I mean, that child is without his dad for 5 years, too. And that's the injustices built into our system. How is that saving our society?
Well, and in 5 years
in any
when
way?
he gets out, 5 years when he gets out, because he's a middle-aged man, 5 years when he gets out, what then? His child is older. He's missed some pretty important years. He's financially ruined. What's he going to do next?
Well, and with a federal conviction, felony conviction.
Follows him. What's he going to do? It's
hard to get a job. It's hard to get established again. You are at a point where moving forward isn't so easy. I wanted to also sort of point that the biggest thing about this sentencing that sort of offends me is that he's sentenced to 5 years, not on the marijuana charge. And that's done intentionally. That's statistically, these things are done intentionally. He was sentenced to 5 years on the gun charge. He was sentenced to time served on the marijuana charge, because we don't put people in jail for marijuana.
Just other stuff.
And that's what it means when people like Kevin Sabet are saying that. No, we invade their lives, terrorize their families, rob them of all of their belongings, put them in a cage, and then drop the charges after we found all these other things by passage of the marijuana crime.
If I'm right, doesn't the marijuana ump the ante? I mean, wouldn't it have been? I mean, what you know what I mean? Adding that in there,
yes, in the fact that so here's the deal: if I have a legal gun,
worse?
No, there's a few different things that can happen here. But if I have a legal gun and I am a law-abiding citizen, and I then sell you marijuana, I now possess a gun in the commission of a crime, which is itself its own charge that is much more serious than the possession of marijuana, or the selling of marijuana even. And the way our system works, it's biased. Again, like I said, there's this whole game being played here. But the marijuana allowed them to invade your privacy, to find that you had this lawful gun, which is suddenly illegal because of the marijuana. Now you're a violent drug offender. Now you support statistics that people who use marijuana aren't innocent hippies. They're violent. They see these firearms. You know what I'm saying? Like the way that these statistics are manipulated paints a picture that they want the public to see. And the consequences are this child without his dad and this man in prison for 5 years to keep up appearances. Because, as Kevin Sabet likes to point out, as a former ONDCP advisor, we aren't putting anybody in prison for marijuana. We aren't doing this. We aren't enforcing these. Yes, we are.
Yeah. We are, and we're just trashing your life. That's all.
It's
I don't, it's a sad situation. It sucks that he even had to do 5 years, or that he even had to go through all of this in the first place. I mean, because there was a lot of tragedy up to this point.
I was to say, going back to his co-defendants, Richard Fleur, who passed away in prison. I mean, as bad as Chris's sentences and everything, and one of the other fellows also got 5 years in probation, I think, and I think the other guy might have gotten 5 years probation as well.
Yeah,
Richard Fleur was the other one that was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he died before he was ever actually transferred to where he was supposed to send.
And when did he die of?
He had medical complications.
That's right.
And the transfer point where he was at, waiting to go to his final destination, was not equipped to deal with the medical problems that he had. So he
so a
did not
patient
make
died in prison because he wanted to use marijuana. Wow, what a shame! What a shame that's the situation. And then of course Montana has repealed their medical marijuana law. So I wonder how many more cases we'll see, or how many other people have been put in, risk now.
Well, I mean, there's attacks both ways about marijuana across the board. I mean, in Colorado, they're talking about, putting DUI provisions, which they've been talking about for years, but that conversation's coming back up.
Well, and there's also in Washington, there was somebody who just filed a bill, is trying to do it in a sneaky way, to allow the cities or the counties to ban the sale of marijuana. And the way she's trying to do it is, like the Oregon Health Authority did here with the fee increases. Do it without any public knowledge or any public awareness, just backdoor kind of
game.
Yeah, back to that game. And it's like, if you live in Washington, I don't care how far away or how near you are to the Capitol, you need to be making some noise because you voted this in. This is a momentous occasion. And, we have the right to see it, through to fruition. And I think, I'm hoping that they see the common sense in regulating it and the industry that would come of that, and the state benefit to that is in the form of revenue and taxes. Before they gave any credence or time to a silly bill.
Well, and I think we know and we see it, and this is true of the Blumenauer-Polis bill as well, but sometimes bills get introduced that won't go anywhere, and it's meant to raise awareness, promote outrage or whatever.
Well, and let's say that's maybe true. That may happen. But look at California. California's still fighting, with differences and stuff, and that stuff that's been happening. How many years have they had medical marijuana now? There's still things like this happening. We just need to stay ever vigilant and aware and show up and keep our voices until all the states are
one of
legal.
those things that's happening. Just on a quick note, here in Oregon, there's a representative that proposed prohibiting tobacco, and making it punishable by prison sentence, and $1,650.
Jennifer, you're going to jail.
Well, and he was quoted saying that he had no expectation that it would be passed, but he wanted to promote the conversation.
What conversation? That he's completely loony?
Well, but on that note,
prohibition doesn't work.
That takes away all of the bias for marijuana and actually focuses on
tobacco.
I'm kind of interested in seeing this debate. I want to see what people have to say when it's something that we know is harmful, but we know that millions of people do and are not going to lightly set it down.
Well,
should they be going to jail for it?
We also understand that it's highly addictive.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and
it's made that way.
It's socially unacceptable, but not immoral in most circles. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are okay with people doing it even while they pinch their nose.
And I think that the more people are seeing marijuana that way, it's not, it's not immoral.
Well, and that's why I say that debate could actually be interesting, much as the idea of abhors, is abhorrent to me. Like, it repels me to consider that somebody would be like, yes, let's do this. Yes, let's arrest more people while Oregon's looking at trying to
anybody that
solve
proposes some sort of prohibition or abstinence to just be smacked at the back of the head and shown hard and shown here in the history book right here. I want you to read this. Prohibition doesn't
proves
work.
We need more funding for schools because people don't know
funding
that we
for
keep
smart
trying
people.
the same
That's my
failed
campaign.
experiments.
That's my campaign. More money for smart people. It baffles my mind whenever I hear somebody, throw out that argument towards anything.
Yeah.
Prohibition doesn't work, folks. It never
Doesn't
has.
work.
It's not going to work. And it doesn't matter if it's marijuana or if it's tobacco or if it's alcohol. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work.
You're listening to A Different View. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Dan Michaels. If you're looking for professional voice talent for your commercial or podcast, I'm your man. Visit danmichaelsaudio.com for more information.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Our marijuana laws are terribly unfair, and they make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges, and we are unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They are average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. And it's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
It looks like black smoke. Oh no. Looks like black smoke. Looks like black smoke. Oh no. Looks like black smoke. It looks like black smoke's on the horizon.
Now we're back with A Different View.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us to the last segment of the show. We brought to you a story of a young mother who, through tragic circumstances, I think your case is pretty public, so I'm going to be delicate about the details because I know that there's a lot of information that would give it away because it's pretty unique. But tragic circumstances of fire, and two of your children, is that correct, perished in that fire. The state, or the county, correct?
The hospital
got involved and removed the child from the home. And you've been fighting, gosh, that's been
2 years almost.
2 years to get your child back. What's going on with the case currently?
Well, they were addressing me as a safety issue because of the medical marijuana all of this time, and I have been bringing them professional reports from professionals, addressing the medical marijuana, and I recently had a psychological that DHS paid for.
This is one that they were forcing you to take, correct?
Well, I wasn't refusing to take it.
Okay.
Because I knew that if I sat down and had a intellectual conversation with a professional, that I could remove a lot of the bias that DHS is trying to pass off in court as fact without proper professionals. Even the judge was questioning the credentials of the professional statements DHS was bringing into them. And the judge asked for it to be addressed. And the first DHS wanted me to go to a pain clinic, and I went there, and I got them to address the medical marijuana.
Okay.
And they paid for that. And then I had the psychological, and it addresses the medical marijuana. It addresses whether I can be on it with him in my care. It addresses whether I can eat it in my food in front of him. Like, it is addressed to be as it should be treated as any other medication, is how the psychologist addressed it. And it does address the issue of smoking it, that it should not be smoked in front of the child, and the child should have no knowledge of the smoking of the marijuana. But it is addressed that he is safe in my care, and that I do not lack the parenting resources. So you
presented this to DHS, correct?
It was...
They requested it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they paid for it.
But they have these reports, right? And,
yes, they
and
got
what
them
is
because they paid for it.
So what is... Are they still...
I had to get it through them.
Are they not taking... How do they feel about these reports now? Are they using them?
They have not... even my attorney hasn't discussed the report with me. I showed up to court. My attorney emailed me the report the night before court. And when I went to court, my attorney said, "Did you get the report? Did you read it?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, DHS is begging for 90 more days." And so
DHS wants 90 more days after they receive the reports?
Yes.
Okay.
And at the last court hearing, they were suggesting to send my son to his father's, which is not really a safe...
Right, we discussed that in the last one.
Yeah, option. And so when the judge asked if I had anything to say, I said, "I think this psychological should be done, and we should get back in court right away." And so the judge said, "Okay, we're going to schedule a half-day fully contested hearing." And we had that hearing this last January, and when we showed up to court, everybody was unprepared, even my attorney, and the judge asked everybody if they were aware that it was a fully contested hearing, and they all said no. Was I the only one who caught that? And then they all went in the judge's chambers. I asked, am I supposed to go back there? Because, they're going to discuss everything. And
right.
My attorney didn't really discuss anything other than DHS wanting 90 more days. And then they all come out, and the judge comes out, and they all, have their heads down, and they all go around, and they all say, we need 90 more days, we need to change our plan. And
change our plan?
Plan to what? I mean, if you comply with everything they've asked you to do, why
this goes back to what we were talking about last week or the week before, but basically the state has this stated goal that they need to protect that child from any potential risk, including his mother. And they have to prove that she's not a risk, as opposed to having to prove that she is a risk. In order for her to get her kid back, they have to prove she's not a risk. And that's a hard thing to prove. It's been how long now?
Almost 2 years.
Your baby's growing. I mean, that's so sad. Do you get to see him?
Yeah, but the caseworker wants to play the power game, and she's restricted my visits based off of I was driving. Oh, there were reports that I was driving with him. And I must be under the influence because I'm a medical marijuana patient.
So it's a presumed guilt.
Yeah. And because my 3-year-old was asking to ride in my car, I told him, you have to ask the caseworker. Next thing I know, I have supervised visits in the office 2 hours a week now because he said I drove him in my car, supposedly. And he's a 3-year-old with a speech delay.
This is so hard. I mean, I feel like in some ways, the lawyer should be your advocate, but I don't think lawyers are advocates. Even if it was a paid lawyer, though, I don't feel like that they're looking out for your relationship with you and your child. They're looking out for your... It's a different perspective.
It's just about getting the kid home. It's not about facts or anything. It's about just...
or the health of the family, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for a fact that there have been multiple studies that show that even a current meth or crack addict or serious drug
and the only thing they can
better
attack
for the child to be in that home with services.
The only thing
than
they
to be
can
taken
attack
out.
with any drug or any kind of substance is if it affects your ability to be a minimally adequate parent. That's the only thing they can
So just
attack.
so I understand, DHS asked for additional 90 days because they have to pursue a new strategy. So their intent is to separate your parental rights from your child. Is that...
Well, no, they cannot pursue the medical marijuana anymore. And this report...
so what do they have left to pursue then?
Because this report goes
well, no,
on.
that report leaves
It
options
goes on.
for them to pursue in what she was just saying, like
It
not
goes
smoking
on
around
to
them.
the
And then,
Right.
But no.
I see.
But no, it goes. It addresses that. There's no reason to believe that I am doing that.
no, right. I'm
or
not saying. I'm
exposing
saying
it to
that
him.
they still have these avenues.
But this addresses.
So
that.
are they just
It
going to
does
put
address
in
that.
cameras in your house? Is that what they're going to do
I
to provide proof?
I have my own cameras if they want that. I already have the cameras. But no. They went on to and diagnosed me with complex PTSD from the trauma I have been experiencing.
Somebody might have a little
from
PTSD.
The state.
Yeah.
Throughout my life, I was in state's custody when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have had a lot of trauma from the state.
Mm-hmm.
And I did want to address that. But this psychologist, he said that I came in like I was angry with my fists up ready to fight, and I was not like that. I'm not angry. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated.
I mean,
I would be too.
It's hello. Who you've taken my kid for over 2 years? Yes, I'm frustrated.
You know, PTSD is very physical, and I've been developing, you know, more and more complex symptoms since the involvement from the
Well,
state.
you can't even grieve. You can't even get past it. You can't even go through that process.
It's not finished. It's still happening.
Right, you're still in the middle of it, and it seems like they're dragging out the torture. Have you asked them what it's going to take to provide enough proof to the state for them to feel that you have met their definition of an adequate and safe parent for your child?
What they're left with is this psychologist recommends DBT therapy, which I looked at the DBT therapy. I looked at the symptoms and things they list on their website, and I did not see any of those that appealed to me. And I would think that the DBT specialists would need to do some type of evaluation further.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's quite an extensive evaluation, actually.
Yeah, that's all they're left with at this point.
And DBT, from what I understand, is it's intensive one-on-one therapy, and it's also group therapy. So it's a mix of both. So they want you in some ongoing, but it's like a long ongoing treatment.
It says 6 months minimum.
Minimum, yeah, and yeah.
And what they've been wasting all their time
nice
here.
If the
and
state would quit traumatizing you and
Exactly.
giving your kid back.
The original stipulations for taking him away no longer exist.
So they're
yeah. The system is broken. I think that's the title for today's show. The system is broken.
The system sucks.
Their biggest stipulation was the medical marijuana. Everything else was I had 2 broken feet because I went out the window.
Right.
You know, I was homeless because my home burned down. I had housing. My housing worker's still with me. She's been with me since before the fire. Was in my home weekly, every week before the fire, and has been behind me 100%, knowing I'm a medical marijuana patient. It's a DHS county housing program.
You know, and you're a perfect example of why it needs to be legal and regulated,
and
because medical marijuana just doesn't provide you enough protections when it counts. It just doesn't do that. It creates way too many loopholes, way too many people to exploit the system, and then there are individuals like you who are lost in it, who don't get the protection that they need from the state.
I am hoping that this psychological can be presented in court appropriately in April, and that it can address a lot of things for the entire juvenile justice system.
Some precedents, like you were saying.
Not just on medical marijuana, but the way that they approach and their professionals that they use, their standards of evidence. In my public defender's words, she said to me, in the juvenile justice system, the standard of evidence is so low you cannot win a case.
I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that.
You know, I'm sorry that you're going through this. Please keep us updated. Anyone listening to the show or downloading the show tonight, if you know anyone who's willing to help out in this case or can make anything happen, please contact the show so that we can get you in contact with her. Because
And
this
really
is
quick-
ridiculous. 2 years.
Yeah, I was going to say really quick on PTSD. I mean, and I'm sure you could speak to how effective it can be for this. But we are having a hearing here in Oregon Thursday, 3 p.m. at Salem Capitol.
Great, we have
for
another
adding
diagnosis,
PTSD.
but does it help her?
No, but it's a step forward. I mean, because all of this is
But
probably...
she's still in the same room.
No, for sure. I was just throwing it out there as a reminder.
Doesn't go far enough.
So you're listening to A Different View. We'll be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Our Twitter is ADV420. You can check us out on Facebook and check out our webpage where we are posting the shows and summaries and links and all
We'll get
that.
the quilt stuff up pretty soon.
ADV420.com. Thank you for listening.